Hi, hello, and welcome to this webinar about the sustainable AI. We have been looking forward to this, and we hope that nothing is broken today. It actually broke up not yesterday, but last week. So that's why we had to postpone it until this week. I'm Suzanne Lauritzen. I am the co-founder and CEO of Raffle AI, and with me I have
Rasmus Crüger Sørup. I'm the CTO of Raffle.
So today we're going through a bit of history on Raffle, and it's not actually to talk a lot about the actual technology. It's only because it's actually important to the sustainability of AI and what we do to keep it sustainable and to take care of our world. So we'll go through some presentation and. Please feel free to ask any questions along the way if you want to. It's going to take approximately half an hour, and then we have also questions, of course, afterwards. I will just share my screen here. Right. So the technological innovation on search is important to showcase how we manage to do something different than what you would see others do. So that's why we're going through this slide. So what we did in the past, 5 years ago, we made this invention of going from traditional search to AI search. And we did that by having AI as a core in the technology, and not just as powered by AI, but actually the actual core of Raffle is based on artificial intelligence. And that makes a huge difference. You can always have some traditional search in the core of AI, but it's very, very difficult to put AI on top of a traditional search. And we have made the analogy at the bottom, so you can see the landline phone, and you can see it develop into the mobile phone and the smartphone. And basically, this is what is also happening with Raffle and with traditional search going into AI search instead. So you cannot put an app as you can in a smartphone. You cannot put an app into a traditional or a landline phone. And this is why AI on top of traditional stuff just doesn't really work very well. So that has been tried out a lot with traditional chatbots. Just putting AI on top of a hierarchy and a structure is not working very well. So what we did instead is we made this core of AI. So in the core of AI, you can say we have the mobile phone, and this mobile phone can then develop into a smartphone. And the smartphone, from our perspective, is then when you make this search into something new. So we don't believe that search is going to keep on being search as we know it today. I don't think many do, actually. So now we also have the opportunity to utilize generative models that we're going to talk a lot about today. So the generative models are what we base Raffle chat on, and also what we base Raffle summaries on. So the summary feature is basically a summary of the search that you have gotten answers to. So because Raffle is very, very accurate, it's more than 80% accuracy out of the box, day one, and implemented in a couple of days only, because it's zero shot. Then because of this accuracy, then the summaries are also going to be very, very accurate. So imagine putting a summary on top of a traditional search where you have a very, very poor accuracy, then the summary is also going to be very poor. So that's basically garbage in, garbage out. So if you have the AI as a core, as we do at Raffle, then with this accuracy, we are also able to make summaries that are amazingly correct. We're going to get into more also in detail about why it is that we can make it more correct than anybody else when it comes to utilizing these generative models, and what Raffle does to sort of capture the essence of these generative models into the purpose of what we do. Raffle chat is an advancement of this. because then now you, instead of making a search and then you get a result and you get a summary, and you make a new set, you get a search and you get a new summary and new results. Then in Raffle Chat, you can ask a question, of course, and then you can basically dive into the subject more and more concretely. So Raffle Chat is an automatic chatbot. So how we understand, or how we understood chatbots before, is not going to develop very much in the future, because chatbots are basically content that you do on the side of your normal content. So you make these content structures, and you make certain flows, and it's very time consuming to do that, because basically you have to reformulate all your current content into structured flows, and then it doesn't really understand very well where it is that you want to go. So instead of that, we are utilizing all the content that is already there, and we make that content into understandable human-like answers. So basically we regenerate on the fly the answers that you before had to do manually. And also we come up with follow-up questions. You can contact support. There's a lot of engineering around that, where it just is a seamless experience from a customer point of view. But this is only possible because the core of it is based on AI and not on a traditional foundation like manual structures. So I won't talk more about this. I will go more into what can you actually measure when it comes to sustainability. And I know Rasmus has a lot of good points here on what we can do when it comes to AI and making that sustainable, in the sense that it's not. We have heard a lot about AI and how awful it is at actually utilizing a lot of waste and utilizing a lot of water, for example, to cool it down and stuff like that. So more, a lot like actually what we saw when Bitcoin and Ethereum came along. There was all these coins starting up from that, and 98% of them doesn't exist anymore. It's the same sort of thing that we are experiencing today, that we have this ChatGPT coming into the market. A lot of apps are coming into the market. There's sort of this hysteria about how you can utilize it the most and stuff like that. And let's see how long this is going to last. But we need to get some control over it, and that's what we basically can do: control it to actually utilize it in business. So so how do we measure?
Yeah, how do we measure? And there are many ways to measure sustainability if you are a software organization. And again, also sustainability can mean many things in the broader sense. We are, of course, as a software company and as an AI-based search company, we are focusing on the technology aspect of sustainability. But that's also a very big area and very relevant for the whole world right now. We all know that. So what is it that we do to keep our focus and awareness on sustainability? Well, we do as much measurement as we can, both on our infrastructure and also on the way that we serve our search. So all the components underneath, what do we do to make sure that they run as efficiently as possible from a resourcing perspective? Because we all know the more computational resources that we need for some job, the more emphasis it will have on the sustainability aspect. So what we have done very concretely and that we oversee on a day-to-day basis is through a dashboard that we have set up, where we can measure the environmental footprint. Basically, it's connected to our main infrastructure, so we are running on Microsoft Azure, and I will come a little bit back to that later, why we are doing that, and what Microsoft are doing to make sure that they are as sustainable as they can be. But we are measuring our infrastructure and the different numbers that are relevant to keep track of how good we are doing. Because if you want to become sustainable and more sustainable over time, you need some numbers to track against. If you don't have that, it's very difficult to conclude if you're doing anything good or if you have progress in all your efforts in trying to design and optimize for lower resource footprints and so on. But we also, in addition to having the overall dashboard, we are measuring a lot of things all the way down the hierarchy of our components. So we, for example, track how much memory are we using to store documents, how much memory and what are the GPU resources we use for model training. We measure on all of those things. We do a lot of activities to make sure that we can serve our search on resources that have lower impact on the environment. So for example, if we can run on CPUs, we do that. So a part of our search is running on CPUs and not GPUs, which makes a big difference. And we only use the more heavy resources for doing the parts of our model training that is strictly necessary to run on GPUs. So we do all these things, and we of course also measure over time how fast are people actually finding what they're looking for, because the less time they have to spend looking for things, the better it is for everybody, and of course also the environment. So we track on all of these numbers to make sure that we are heading in the right direction, and we are starting out with a baseline so we can make sure that that we are improving. So without numbers, it's very difficult to do. Yeah.
Okay, so let's dive in a bit into the technology behind it. So why when we went through the first slide, we were talking a lot about accuracy and the importance of accuracy, and this importance in the accuracy is also important to sustain the sustainability measures, right? Because the more accurate you can be, the less effort you have to ask the models to do for you. So that is why the first slide with Raffle Search as sort of the fundamental of everything we do going forward, like the mobile phone is the fundamental of the smartphone. That is very, very important when it comes to sustainability as well. So this fundamental, this slide is showing how we have Raffle Search that you can basically put on top of any content that you have in-house or on your website, for example. And this Raffle Search is very, very accurate because it's based as a core on artificial intelligence. It's based on some other models than the generative models. So it's based on what you could say today, smaller models to actually find the search results. And it's not very, it doesn't take up a lot of power to do Raffle Search. So that is something that we've been working on for a long time to minimize the amount of waste when it comes to utilizing Raffle Search. But I know Rasmus is going to get into that because it's the core fundamental of Raffle and therefore also very important. So then when we have this very small output, actually, we serve all of your content. So let's say you have, I don't know, 100,000 documents or 20,000 documents or pages, whatever. And then what the output from Raffle is basically 15 sections or 20 sections or 30 sections that are relevant to that exact search that you have put in. And that is because Raffle is very, very accurate in finding the right results immediately. So if you only have about, let's say, 15 sections in documents that are relevant to that search, then imagine that you only have to put those 15 sections into a large language model, which is Raffle large language model, that we have also fine-tuned and also made as sustainable as possible. So as it is very limited and very accurate content that we put into this large language model, then the summary feature is actually very, it's very easy for the large language model to come up with something that is amazingly accurate as well, and doesn't hallucinate like it would do if you go out on large scale content and don't have this search in the front. That is the core fundamental of delivering the content. And this large language model, which is a generative model, we also utilize when we do Raffle Chat. And as you know, Raffle Chat, of course, is a chat functionality will take up much more resources because you have a dialogue with it. So again, it is very important that always the Raffle search is behind the scene, sectioning out, only delivering exactly what is needed to deliver to this large language model, so that it always generates precise, accurate answers, and also utilize as little waste as possible. So, but let's go into the actual technology.
Let's talk a little bit without making it too hairy. Then let's talk a bit about what it is that we are doing. And as Suzanne correctly said, we're using different types of language models to serve our search. So we have some smaller models, the Raffle language models. We use that for the core of our search ranking, and we use some larger models. So the Raffle large language models that are the generative models, and we use them to serve our chat functionality and the summary functionality. What is very important here, and I know that over the past half year or so, I mean, the whole world have been swarmed with the greatness of AI, and everybody using ChatGPT to do a lot of things. And yes, it's fun to play with, and you can get it to write a children's good night story, and you can also use it to make your business plan for your new business, right? I mean, it spans in a very wide spectrum, and people have been very dazzled about the capabilities of the GPT models, but people may not really consider, I mean, not necessarily at least, the environmental footprint of the processes happening behind the scenes. So when these super large models are being served by companies like OpenAI, and the models are, I mean, the GPT 3.5 model is around 170 billion parameters, so it's super large. Just the time and efforts required in training that model, and the model has been pre-trained on pretty much all of the content of the entire internet, and is being updated, of course, as we go. The training of that model is I mean, beyond what people can imagine, and even serving the inference process. So when you actually sit and have a conversation with ChatGPT, I mean, it's at least stated lots of places in out there in articles that half a liter of water is being consumed just for a simple conversation. And thinking about having billions of users using ChatGPT, I mean, the total water footprint is going to be of a magnitude that everybody can of course appreciate is unsustainable more long term.
And I just want to ask you something, because all these apps that comes into the market where you can do different stuff, they run on these massive language models, right?
Yes.
So basically what we probably need, or what we will advocate for, is that like when you buy food, you have a stamp when you know that this is sort of environmentally friendly or something like that. That is very, very hard to see when it comes to buying software. And we believe it's very, very important that you can actually see through that. Because that is something that we are focusing tremendously on, that when we make search and we make chat, it should not take up more power than if you use a traditional search and a traditional chatbot.
It's very intransparent in that sense. You, as a user of that software, you have no idea what's happening behind the scenes. So we're using some much smaller models. We can because we have a very dedicated problem that we're solving. We're solving the search problem, and we're building some super nice and relevant functionalities on top of that. But we can use models, generative models, that are 1,000 times smaller than, for example, the GPT models, and we can serve that and host that ourselves. That has a lot of other benefits. Let's not go into that.
Compliance and
there's a lot of stuff related to security and compliance and all these other things that we are, of course, very focused on. But by serving these much smaller models and taking them, you could say, pretty much off the shelf, they're already pre-trained. We don't even train those models from start to end, because that also requires a lot of computation. So we take those models, and then of course we have a lot of research behind the steps that we then do from taking some of those available models out there that are much smaller but solve the problem very efficiently, and turn that in and fine-tune that to our specific needs. We can do that because we of course have worked in this field for a long time, and we have some very skilled people behind. But by doing that, we will have at the end some small models that we can serve on much fewer resources, and it will provide the same functionality. So that is the stuff that we do to make sure that our impact and footprint on the environment is as low as possible. And as I said before, our ranking models, they can be served on CPUs, which require much less power to run than for example GPUs. So we put a lot of research and focus into the work around our language models, so both the ranking ones and the generative ones, to make sure that they are way more efficient than what you would see out there today. And in addition to that, we also apply a lot of engineering principles in the way that we work. So being sustainable as a software organization means that everybody within the organization will be involved. All the way down from how do we design the software, the architecture, how do we design our algorithms and data structures and the way we store data in an optimal way, all the way up through the chain. So we do a lot of work in my team, the tech department, where we design with a low memory footprint in mind. We of course always make sure that we have the same level of search quality and performance in our applications and services. But and we also use other practices. We spend a lot of time looking at the architecture of our services. We make sure that we design them in a way so they have lowest resource footprint as possible. Yeah.
So why is this important to companies, and especially, I mean, we our service is primarily for medium-sized companies and enterprise companies, and we know that you all have obligations on your annual accounts, where you have to justify that what you are utilizing, the software you're utilizing, the way you're doing products like we do, is okay. It's upholding the ESG standards and the sustainability standards. So why is this so important?
I mean, it is of course important because we are all in it together, you could say. I mean, we all have our responsibilities. I think especially as companies in the world, it's very difficult for people at home to maybe figure out what can I do? Of course, we will try to recycle the items we use in our daily lives, and we try to reduce on the amount of water that we consume and so forth. But especially as a company, now that we're not, of course, the largest organization in the world yet, but for sure, I mean, the big corporations, they have a huge responsibility here.
Yeah.
I mean, a huge responsibility. But we will also be part of that. We will be part of taking that responsibility and do what we can. We are working with AI. We are founded on research. We have a lot of activities going on where we can impact how we do things from the AI perspective. And there'll be a lot of other companies out there. Now, you mentioned the whole crypto industry. And of course, they're also looking at moving from proof of work to proof of stake and so on, and to reduce the power consumptions in the way they operate. So we feel a big responsibility being in the AI space and working with AI technologies. What can we do to make sure that we treat the planet in a good way?
Exactly, and it's also about all the problematic stuff about greenwashing and stuff like that. That the large corporation have, as you also say, we all have an enormous responsibility in this, but we also are responsible of actually being able to see through what's happening, right?
Yes.
So we cannot just utilize applications like we could not just buy, what did they call it? They called it the coins that back then that were shit coins, I think they called it. And there is a reason why you call it these names after a while. It's because it actually does have an impact. And it does have some implications that are not good, especially for sustainability wise. So we need to we have taken up that responsibility. I know a lot of other organizations has taken up this responsibility, but we probably need some kind of stamp or some kind of proof so that people can actually see through it, because it's very, very difficult to see through it.
It is.
So could we? What about the suppliers? Because they must also be important,
of course,
in all of this.
And being a software vendor in the AI space, and of course not being interested in having our own servers in the basement serving our services and infrastructure, we rely on suppliers and partners in this space. So what can you do if you need to use others for serving your software? So we are a SaaS company, and we run in data centers, but there are still actually things you can do. We choose our suppliers with great care, and when we choose our suppliers, we are very focused on how do they support sustainability, what do they do, and also again, what do we do to make sure that our suppliers are living up to the expectations we have for them, for example, running a data center. So that's one of the reasons that we have chosen to run on Microsoft Azure, because they are really doing a lot to make sure that Azure is a sustainable choice when hosting SaaS solutions. They do a lot of work in terms of reducing the carbon footprint. They run to the furthest extent that they can on renewable energy sources. So that would, for example, be wind and solar and hydroelectric power plants running the data centers. They run on sustainable technologies. They have very efficient resource utilization. So they put a lot of engineering work into making sure that the Azure cloud infrastructure is designed to optimize resource utilization and reduce the waste, and that also in terms of cooling of their data centers and so on. And they also have some very nice capabilities in terms of scalability. So for example, when you don't need the resources, things can be shut down, and they can be brought back up when the needs arises, and that can be done in a very flexible way. So we, of course, running a search solution, We know because we are doing that for our clients, tracking their activities, so they can see when are people actually searching for things. And that usually happens to be between 8, 9 in the morning and then 5, 6 in the afternoon, because that's when people are active and working and looking for things. That also means that this is where we spend most of our resources. And then after that period of time, so during the night, for example, we won't use so many resources. And Azure gives us those capabilities of turning things up and down during the day.
And then also from a compliance perspective, and also the way we can uphold security statements and all this. Yes, that is very important.
That is also.
And when we say, of course, daytime, that is also different from when you are on the other side of the world. But we have Azure Center in Europe for all our European clients, and then we have data center in the US for the US clients and so forth, but we can sort of level up and down. I guess you can do that with any cloud provider, so that's not sort of Microsoft Azure as well, but we have chosen that because it has a lot of good points when it comes to sustainability.
Absolutely.
And then there's also all the things that you talked about with the software engineering and how the processes are, you have to make sure that that's also sustainable.
Yes.
So all in all, very important to choose suppliers, but also yourself being a supplier. We are also a supplier, of course, that is sustainable in everything that we or try to be it in everything that we do. So that's our statement for this.
Absolutely.
So I think maybe we should we open up for questions? If there are any questions in the crowd today, please do come up with them. I don't know if we have anything we can talk about until then.
No, I think maybe you mentioned it before, but since we are so deeply involved in AI and we have among the best people at least here in the country working with Raffle and
actually we have to say something about that because half of our staff is from other countries. So they might live here, but but we have actually recruited from many places in the world to basically
also
get the best ones.
We have also educated some of them actually. So Ole is the guy that really does that, and that also makes us feel obligated to take part of the whole sustainability in AI discussion. Right? I mean, we have a way of impacting this. So we feel that we have to, and of course we want to be part of that.
Yes, definitely. Is there a question or are there some questions coming in?
How will you ensure you continue to be sustainable?
Yes. Well, we will keep on, of course, constantly bringing up better processes, and there is a constant development in sustainability measures as well. So it's also about staying on top and being on track with what the measures are in the world and what is important. We are making measures also in our annual accounts going forward. So that's also sort of a way of, we have the SOC 2 report that we have to also be compliant with. So and then we have a lot of great clients that will make sure that we stay on top of this.
And maybe just mentioning again the software design principles we have. For example, now we are basing our generative models on some models that are available today, but we have also made sure that we have an architecture behind the scenes so that if other models come along at some point, we can replace them with more efficient models, still living up to the same search capabilities and performance, but with a lower footprint.
Yeah, that's a great point.
That's super important that we do things like that. Yeah.
Because that's actually also how search was developed over time. Yeah. Because in the beginning, when we started out 5 years ago, the search models were also very, very big, and we had to do everything we could to make those smaller for our purpose. And it's the same thing as we actually do for the large language models today, right?
Yes.
We're also making them smaller to serve the problem that we are at now. And they will keep on growing and growing, like the mobile phones grow and grow, and the computers grow and grow. I remember I saw a talk in 2018 where they said that the processing power of a gaming computer in 2018 was as big as the processing power in the whole world in 2001. So that means that you have, your 8-year-old could sit with a computer of the capacity of the whole world in 2001 and 2008. So it will keep on growing, and that's why we also have an obligation to keep on sort of only using those models for the purpose that it is intended, and not just utilizing, the whole big models for doing chats on the internet. I mean, it's fun, as you also say.
Yeah.
But we just have to think about what it actually does to the world and to the globe.
Let's do one more question. I'll just read that out loud. So, how come Raffle is technologically in front and not bigger and older companies such as Algolia and Elasticsearch?
How come
why are we leading the field around search from the AI angle? Yeah, why are we doing that?
But okay, then let's tap into the processing power, because that's actually why why Raffle was invented in the first place. So processing power suddenly grew in 2017, so that it was possible to take these very large language models that are similar today, but actually to put them into a context of smaller data set. And a smaller data set would then be a data set that is, for example, in a whole company. You would say it's a large data set, but actually it's a small one when it compares to the whole world. And that is what we always compare it to. We always compare data sets to the internet, for example. So that's a very large data set. Anyway, we could take these these models that were requiring servers before. We could take them down to computers now and actually mingle around with them for these large language models at that point. And that made it possible for us to make an AI search on the core of AI, but still, not having a large footprint, because we limited it to the purpose of what we were actually doing. So that's why we are in front, because everything, the traditional searches that were invented before, that's a long time ago. I don't know, Elastic, I think that's from 2008 or something like that. So that's very traditional. Like Algolia is based on that. Lucene, Solar were the founders, you could say, of this. Elastic is built on that, and so that's sort of a whole track record of traditional searches that were just sort of developing through times, but they didn't have any AI, and it was based on keywords and tags, or is based on keywords and tags, and it's like it functions like a dictionary, basically, right? And that's not very fun to read.
But also, some of the techniques, they haven't been around for that long. I mean, and we have people that have been part of that journey right from the start, and being part of a research group with the dedicated focus on deep learning in this space. I think that's also one of the reasons that they have been focusing on other things, whereas we have been purely focusing and founded on these principles.
Yeah, and even if they were available before, you couldn't utilize them because they were taking up too much processing power. So it was sort of the clash between the two that you had a development in both.
Combination of resources and algorithms and technology, basically. And that sort of really fitted with the founding of Raffle.
Exactly. Exactly.
Maybe one more question. So Anna is asking, what if we wanted to implement something with, for example, ChatGPT in our business? So I'm not really sure what the question is here, but say you want to do that. I would then say it depends a lot on what it is that you want to use ChatGPT for.
Yeah, I just wanna make it very clear here that ChatGPT is a large language model.
Mm-hmm.
So when we're talking Raffle large language model, it is equivalent to ChatGPT.
But it's not.
Just
yeah,
not
no,
ChatGPT.
I mean, so ChatGPT is being served by the GPT models that they have behind the scenes. So
which is a brand. It's just like, you know, any other brand. It's like Coca-Cola, and then you also have Pepsi.
Yeah,
right?
So they have their generative models running behind the scenes, and you have probably seen it says GPT 3.5 and GPT 4. That's what they use. These super large models, they haven't even revealed how big GPT 4 is. Probably because it is so big that they don't want to say it, right?
Yeah.
But so we don't use that.
No, we don't use it because it's taking up too much power. It's like buying a pair of trousers that are just so big that you basically stumble in it, right? So it's very hard to do something with this that can actually, you know, serve your purpose. If you just take it off the shelf, you would use too much power. You would use too many resources. And you would also have to fit it to your purpose.
Yes.
And the fitting to your purpose is basically what this is all about. So that's what we have done. We have fitted it to the purpose.
And if the question is more, what if you want to implement AI-powered search in your organization? Then I think we have an obvious answer, right? I mean, then you contact us, and then we will help you with that.
And also, of course, chat. Raffle Chat is an automatic chatbot.
Yes.
If you want to do that, choose a supplier that does what we do, or choose us.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So any other questions, or should we round it up here? I think maybe time is also more or less up.
Yeah, it is.
We want to thank you very much for listening in today. You can always go and stream this afterwards as well, and just share it to everyone who would be interested in hearing more about this. And then the next webinar, I'm actually not sure what that is going to be about, but we will we'll definitely come around with that, and that's going to be in around 6 weeks from now. So
stay tuned.
Happy Tuesday.
Yeah. Thanks everybody.
Bye.